My name is Ellie Ward, and I learned the truth about my place in my family on a sunny afternoon, wearing a frilly pink dress I didn't even pick. While my older sister Lily blew out candles in front of all her friends, I stood alone, clutching a gift I was told not to give. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't just left out, I was meant to be. But someday, they'd all regret making me invisible. Before we dive into this story of betrayal, family favoritism, and one unforgettable moment of revenge, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love hearing how far these stories travel, so drop your city or country below. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. I was 10. 10 years old and already aware that certain things weren't meant for me. Like the way Lily's cake had her name piped in glittery gold icing while mine, the month before, had been a grocery store sheet cake with one candle broken at the base. I didn't say anything then. I never did. But that day, I couldn't stay quiet. The backyard was full of color. Balloons dancing in the breeze, fold-out tables covered in pink and purple tablecloths, and speakers pumping out pop music. Lily, 2 years older and always at the center of attention, was parading around in a glittering birthday sash. I stood at the edge of it all, watching from the shade like a guest who hadn't RSVP'd. I hadn't been allowed to invite anyone, not one friend, not even my neighbor Kayla, who I shared every recess with. I'd asked why over and over. "It's better this way," my mom had said, folding napkins like I might ruin the symmetry if I kept asking. But why just her? I choked out, my throat tightening as I tugged at my mom's elbow. She brushed past, not even looking at me. "Don't make a scene, Ellie." The words hit harder than I thought they would. Not can we talk about it, not even a maybe next time. Just don't make a scene, as if I was the problem, as if I hadn't spent the morning helping set up the very party I wasn't welcome in. I stood near the lemonade stand, blinking hard as tears blurred the garden lights strung above. Some neighbor kid I didn't recognize ran past, trailing streamers from their hair, giggling like they belonged more than I ever could. I wanted to scream. Instead, I looked down at the gift I had wrapped for Lily, an art set I'd saved my allowance for. She loved drawing, and so did I, but no one ever asked me what I wanted. I was going to give it to her during cake time, but now I wasn't sure if I should at all. "Ellie," my dad called from across the yard. "Can you grab more ice from inside?" I nodded. That's what I was good for, running errands, smiling quietly, not making scenes. Inside, the house was quiet and cool. I pressed my forehead to the fridge door for a second, letting it calm the burn behind my eyes. Then I opened the freezer, grabbed the bag of ice, and tried not to think about how my own birthday had been just 3 weeks ago and no one had remembered to bring a camera. For Lily, there were 3. Back outside, the noise swelled again, kids shouting over music, the cake being brought out with a dramatic "ready, 1, 2, 3." From my dad, I froze mid-step watching them sing. Lily stood on a small stool so everyone could see her. Flashbulbs popped, applause swelled, and I just faded into the background. No one noticed when I slipped behind the shed. I sat down in the dirt, hugging my knees, feeling the frills of my dress itch against my arms. I hated this dress. I hated the pink bows. I hated the way it screamed "look at me" while no one ever really did, and that's when it clicked. I wasn't meant to shine, not here, not with them. They had chosen their star, and it wasn't me. Years later, I still had that itchy pink dress. Not because I loved it, God no, but because I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It sat folded in the back of my closet like proof, like evidence. Some girls kept concert tickets or corsages. I kept the dress that told me exactly where I stood in my own family. That night, I was cross-legged on my bed, staring at the ceiling like it might have answers. My room had always been my safe zone, though calling it mine felt generous. It used to be Lily's before she got the bigger room with better sunlight, and I was left with this shoebox. The walls were pale lavender and peeling in one corner where I'd once tried to hang up a poster without asking. Across from me, Marissa lay upside down on my beanbag chair, flipping through my old yearbook. "She didn't even mention you in her senior quote," she said, squinting at Lily's beaming photo. "Thanks to my amazing family for believing in me." Wow, cold. I shrugged. That's how it's always been. Marissa looked up, her hair spilling onto the carpet. But your family, too. Not the right kind, apparently. It wasn't just the birthday party. That had been the first of many slights, each one quiet, subtle, polished under the pretense of fairness. My parents had a talent for exclusion that didn't look like cruelty. They didn't scream or call names. They just forgot things. Left my achievements off the fridge. Showed up late to my school events. Forgot to pick up my recital photos. One time in 8th grade, I won a local art contest. I came home with a certificate clutched in my hand, beaming. My dad looked up from the TV and said, "That's nice, Ellie. Can you grab me a soda?" I got it for him. Of course I did. Because at that point I had already learned joy doesn't get echoed back, it just stops with me. I used to think I was imagining it, I admitted quietly. That maybe I was too sensitive. Marissa sat up properly, her eyes sharper now. Ellie, no, you're not imagining anything. I've seen how they treat you. I've seen how they act like Lily walks on water while you're just background noise. I swallowed, flipping open my own yearbook. Page after page of classmates, notes in margins, silly messages in glitter pen, but none from my parents. I'd shown them the day it came in. My mom flipped through it absently while on a call. My dad said, "Yearbooks are overpriced garbage anyway." "I'm so sick of feeling invisible," I whispered. "You're not invisible," Marissa said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Not to me." And that almost broke me. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that only comes with someone who's seen the full version of you. I loved Marissa for that. She was the only person who knew about the birthday party behind the shed, about the year I spent rehearsing for the school play only for my family to miss opening night for a last-minute dinner with Lily's college advisor. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, my voice tight. "Sometimes I think if I just did more, worked harder, got perfect grades, they'd see me. Like actually see me. You've already done more than enough. You get good grades, you're insanely talented at art, and you're not a raging narcissist like Lily." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. It felt good. "You've got a life waiting for you," Marissa said gently. "College, a fresh start. You don't have to stay in the shadows forever, Elle." I bit my lip. "What if I'm too scared to leave? Then I'll remind you every single day that you deserve more until you believe it." Something cracked inside me then. Not like breaking, but like the first crack in a shell. Letting in light. Maybe I could leave. Maybe there was a world out there where I wasn't always second choice, background noise, or the kid in the itchy dress. Maybe I didn't need their permission to shine. The letter had been sitting in my drawer for 3 days. Crisp envelope. Bold black lettering. "The Austin School of Visual Arts is pleased to offer you admission to our fall program." Every night I'd taken it out and reread it like it might disappear if I didn't look at it enough. My fingers traced the embossed logo. I had worked so hard for this. Stayed late at school in the art room. Saved up for supplies my parents never asked about. Held my breath each time a rejection email came through until finally this. Tonight I thought I'd tell them, just tell them. They didn't have to throw a parade. I didn't need balloons or cake. I just wanted them to care. Dinner was meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Lily was talking about college again, how her advisor said she might be a great fit for Northwestern. My mom nodded, eyes lit up. "That's prestigious. We should schedule a campus visit." "I've already emailed them," Lily said, sipping her iced tea like royalty. My dad turned to her, mouth full. "You'll need top SAT scores for that one, kiddo. You got this." I cleared my throat. Nobody looked. I tried again. I have news too." That got their attention briefly. 4 pairs of eyes flicked to me. My pulse kicked up. I felt like I was back in 5th grade during school announcements, heart pounding, palms slick. "I got into an art school," I said, my voice a little too high. "In Austin, full program starts this fall." Silence, not even a second of polite surprise, just the scrape of my dad's fork on his plate. "Well," he said finally, "if that's what you want." I blinked. "It is." My mom sighed and reached for the salt. "Have you thought about Lily's plans? She might need a car next year if she goes out of state." "I've been saving for tuition," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's nice, dear." She passed the salt to Lily. I stared down at my plate. The mashed potatoes looked like paste. Lily didn't even pretend to care. She was texting under the table, her phone screen lighting up her face with soft blue glow. "Is it expensive?" my dad asked, like he was talking about a new blender. I nodded slowly. "Yeah." But I got partial aid. I'll apply for scholarships, maybe take out some loans. He grunted. Loans stick to you for life, just saying. They went back to eating. I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap, waiting, hoping for something else. We're proud of you, a tell us more. Even just a smile. Nothing came. I worked really hard on my portfolio, I said softly, not even sure why I was still trying. Of course you did, my mom murmured, standing up to refill her water. But what's the job market for painting? It's not just painting, I said quickly. There's design, illustration, digital art. We'll figure out Lily's applications this weekend, she interrupted, turning to my sister. Let's print out that checklist again. My chest felt tight. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was worse, like being erased, like I'd never spoken at all. I stood up from the table without another word and carried my plate to the sink. No one stopped me. No one asked why I wasn't finishing my food. The sound of my footsteps down the hallway was louder than anything they'd said all night. In my room, I closed the door quietly and leaned against it, breath shaking. Why did I even try? Why did I think that this time would be different? I pulled the letter back out of the drawer, smoothing the folds from where my hand had crushed it in my pocket during dinner. I read the first line again, then again, clinging to the only voice that believed in me. We are pleased to offer you admission. They didn't clap, they didn't care, but this letter did. This letter said you belong somewhere. That night I told Marissa over the phone. They didn't say anything, she asked, stunned. Not really. A pause, then, Ellie, that school said yes, remember that, when they couldn't even look up from their plates. I smiled, tears stinging. Yeah, they said yes. And that was enough to carry me just a little bit longer. I used to wonder what it would feel like to walk into a room and not shrink. To not brace myself for comparisons I didn't ask for size that said, why can't you be more like? But in Austin, surrounded by light and paint and strangers who didn't already have me figured out, something shifted. It started small. A handprint of yellow on my jeans I didn't bother scrubbing off. Laughter over midnight ramen in the dorm common room. Professors who actually read my work and said things like bold choice and what made you feel that? And then there was Noah. I first noticed him on the third day of studio workshop. He sat at the edge of the room, sleeves rolled up, brush in his mouth, concentrating hard on a canvas that looked like nothing and everything all at once. His hair was messy in a way that said he didn't care, but somehow made you care. He caught me staring, smirked. Never trust a guy who paints with his mouth, he said. I laughed. Noted. Later that week, I found myself next to him again, this time at the supply closet, both of us reaching for the same charcoal set. Ladies first, he said with a little bow. I can share, I replied, and it surprised me how natural that sounded. Noah was. Warm, not in the loud, flashy way Lily had always been, but in that steady, golden way that made you feel like maybe the sun was rising just for you. He remembered things, asked questions, noticed. One evening, we were in the studio late, the building quiet except for the occasional creak of old pipes and the gentle scratching of brushes on canvas. I was painting something abstract, swirls of color, nothing concrete, but it felt like my insides spilled onto canvas. Noah wandered over, wiping his hands on a rag. That's yours? Yeah. He looked at it for a long time, not the polite kind of looking, the real kind. It feels like trying to breathe underwater, he said. My throat caught. That's exactly what it is. He turned to me then. You're really good. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever told me that, just that. No catch, no comparison, no, but what about Lily? A minute later, I sat back on the floor, my legs stretched out, brushes beside me. You make this place feel different, I said before I could stop myself. Noah sat beside me. Different good, I nodded. You make me feel like I belong somewhere. He smiled, soft and slow. That's because you do. Silence wrapped around us, not awkward, not heavy, just peaceful. The kind you want to bottle up and keep in your pocket for bad days. Later, walking back to my dorm, I realized something. I hadn't thought about my parents once that night. Not about who I wasn't. Not about how loud the silence had been at that dinner table. Just this moment. This city. This version of me that was finally taking up space. It had been a month since that night in the studio. A month of Noah walking me to late-night food trucks and waiting for me outside class. Of sleepy mornings with paint still under our nails and afternoons where we said everything and nothing at all. I was beginning to feel safe. That's why the call knocked the air out of me. It came on a Tuesday. My phone buzzed as I was sketching outside the campus cafe, the sun warm on my shoulders. I almost didn't answer. The contact just said home, a word that had started to feel more like a memory than a place. I picked up. Ellie, my mom's voice, crisp and businesslike. No hi, sweetheart. No, how are classes? Hi, Mom. A pause, then I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Just my life, I thought, but I said, nope, I'm free. Another pause. Well, your father and I were wondering if you might be able to help out, just for a bit. I already knew. Some part of me had known the moment I saw her name. It wasn't a check-in, it never was. What's going on? She sighed. It's Lily. We've hit a bit of a bump with her tuition. Some paperwork didn't go through and we're just trying to float things until it's resolved. Float things, such a gentle word for what it really was. How much? I asked before I could stop myself. My mom perked up, sensing the opening. Just 2,000, we'd pay you back, of course. Of course, my chest tightened. My rent was due in 10 days. My hours at the campus gallery barely covered groceries. But I said, let me think about it. We'd really appreciate it, she added quickly. I told your father you'd understand. That part stung, because I always did understand, even when no one else did. After we hung up, I sat frozen on the cafe bench, my sketch forgotten. My coffee had gone cold. It wasn't the money, not really. It was the fact that this one moment where my life was finally mine was being pulled back toward them, toward Lily. I didn't know what to do. That night, I told Noah everything. We were curled up on his couch, a half-eaten pizza box on the coffee table, the TV playing some documentary neither of us was paying attention to. I didn't mean to cry, but I did. I know I shouldn't even be considering it, I whispered. But maybe if I help this one time, they'll finally see I care, that I'm not the selfish one. Noah didn't interrupt. He let me spill it all, the buried need for approval, the way my stomach still twisted at the idea of disappointing them, even now. When I was done, he sat up and looked me straight in the eyes. I'll lend you the money, he said simply. I blinked. No, I didn't tell you for that. I wasn't asking. I know, he said gently. But I'm offering, not for them, for you, so you don't have to keep tying yourself in knots for people who treat you like a footnote. I pressed my face into his shoulder, tears catching in my throat again, but for a different reason this time. Gratitude, relief, maybe even a little guilt. Thank you, I whispered. He kissed the top of my head. Maybe now they'll see you care, but don't forget you were always enough, even if they never say it. Weeks passed. I told myself every day it was fine. It was just money, temporary, a bridge between old wounds and new beginnings. My parents had promised to pay me back. They said they would. Maybe this was finally the moment everything started to change. But as the weeks turned into months, the silence felt heavier than the money ever could. At first, I gave them excuses in my head. Busy, overwhelmed, paperwork still sorting out. Then the excuses turned to doubt, then to dread. Finally, one Thursday night after my shift at the gallery, I sat on the edge of our tiny apartment couch, phone in hand, staring at the screen until Noah came out of the kitchen. You've been holding that thing like it's going to explode, he said gently. Call them. I'm scared, I admitted. What if they what? He sat down next to me. Say what they always say. I took a deep breath and hit call. My mom answered on the second ring. Ellie, she said brightly, as if she'd been expecting a casual chat. How's Austin? I tried to match her tone. Good, classes are going really well. Pause. I just wanted to check in about the money, the tuition for Lily. Oh, that. Her voice changed, softening into a kind of distant coolness. We'll return it someday. The words landed like a punch. Someday, I repeated, forcing a laugh. You said it would be within a month. Ellie, she said, almost amused. We're doing our best, don't be dramatic. There it was again, don't be dramatic, the phrase that had followed me since the frilly dress and the birthday party. I swallowed hard. I'm not being dramatic, I'm asking about the money I lent you. She laughed faintly. Money comes and goes, families forever, sweetheart, don't make this ugly. My hands shook. I sent you the money because you said you'd pay me back. It's been 3 months. Well, we're a little tight right now with Lily's wedding coming up. You understand, we'll get to it when we can. Something inside me cracked, not loud, not dramatic, just a hairline fracture where hope had been sitting. Okay, I said quietly. Good girl, she murmured. Now how's your art? We're so proud you're doing what you love. Her voice had that same lightness she used when she didn't want to hear the answer. I have to go, I said, and I hung up before she could respond. For a moment I just sat there, staring at the phone like it might give me different words if I pressed it harder. Then Noah's arm was around my shoulders. Ellie, he said softly, I didn't mean to cry. But I did, ugly, quiet tears that came from somewhere deep, from years of holding my breath waiting for them to care. I thought maybe this time, my voice cracked. I thought if I helped them, they'd see me. They'd finally. They won't, Noah said, his voice steady but gentle. They won't see you. Because they don't want to. I buried my face in his chest. He smelled like paint and coffee and everything that felt safe. I don't know how to stop wanting their approval, I whispered. You don't have to stop, he murmured into my hair. You just have to stop bleeding yourself dry for it. We sat like that for a long time. The city hummed outside our window. My phone lay on the coffee table, screen black, like a door I couldn't close but couldn't walk through either. Noah tilted my chin up. His eyes were steady, a little fierce. They don't deserve you, Ellie. The words were simple, but in that moment they felt like a lifeline. I nodded, wiping my eyes. I know, I whispered. I'm just scared that if I stop trying, I'll have no one. You have me, he said without hesitation. And you're going to have so much more than them, you just can't see it yet. Something in his tone made me believe him just a little. I exhaled, slow and shaky. Okay. We stayed on the couch until the city lights dimmed, until the ache in my chest dulled enough for me to breathe. And for the first time, I wondered, not just if my family would ever repay me, but if it even mattered anymore. Maybe the real debt wasn't money. Maybe it was years of love I'd given that had never been returned. I should have known better, but I still sent the message. It was late November, the first real chill creeping into Austin, when I stared at my phone for a full hour before typing out the text. Hi, Mom, Noah and I were thinking of coming home for Christmas this year. Let me know if that's okay. I sat frozen after hitting send. I told myself it wasn't begging, it was just extending a hand. Again, because no matter how many times they dropped it, some part of me couldn't stop reaching. Noah didn't say anything when I told him, just wrapped his arms around me and said, Whatever happens, you'll be okay. The reply came the next morning. Not from my mom, from my dad, strangely. Hi, Ellie. Just wanted to let you know that we've decided not to host Christmas this year. Too much going on, everyone's busy. Hope you understand. Take care, that was it. No mention of Lily, no questions about us. Just a polite, distant shut door. I didn't cry, I wish I had. But it was the dry kind of hurt, the kind that sits low in your stomach and presses down until you can't even speak. Cancelled, I said aloud that night as Noah and I sat on the couch, lights off, TV playing some holiday movie in the background. They canceled Christmas. He raised an eyebrow. Or just canceled you. I wanted to argue. I always wanted to argue. Make excuses for them the way I always did. But I couldn't. Instead, I just stared at the ceiling. Maybe I pushed too hard, I whispered. Noah turned toward me. Ellie, they lied to you, they took your money, they ignored your biggest life decision, and now they've disinvited you from a holiday. You didn't push too hard, you barely pushed at all. I rested my head against his shoulder. I just wanted it to be normal for once. A few days later, on Christmas Eve, I opened Instagram to distract myself from the ache. That's when I saw it. Lily's video. She'd posted it to her story. 30 glittering seconds of our parents' living room, decked out in gold and silver ornaments, a roaring fireplace, and garland across every surface. The smell of cinnamon and pine practically leapt off the screen. Their dog, my childhood dog, wore a red bow and wagged his tail in front of a pile of wrapped gifts. My parents sat on the couch, laughing. Lily posed with her boyfriend near the tree, holding a mug that said First Christmas Engaged. Engaged. I hadn't even known. The camera panned across the room. Every extended family member I remembered was there. Cousins, aunts, even Uncle Tony, who never flew in for anything. People I hadn't seen since I was 18. Everyone, except me. There was no mention of me, no sign of me, just absence. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Noah came out of the bedroom with a mug of cocoa, but I didn't say anything. I just handed him my phone and waited. He watched the video once. Then again. Then he looked at me, jaw tight. They didn't cancel Christmas, they just canceled you. I nodded, the lump in my throat finally breaking loose. I kept hoping they'd surprise me, I whispered. Like maybe this year they'd miss me, maybe they'd call. Noah set the mug down gently and sat beside me. They didn't just forget, they made sure you'd see it. I hadn't thought of that, but he was right. The story, the tags, the way everyone was smiling so hard, as if to say, look what a happy family we are. A holiday highlight reel carefully edited to erase me. And the worst part, it worked. It worked because the silence hurt more than any insult ever could. Can I tell you something? Noah said after a long silence. Please. If you weren't strong, really strong, you'd have gone back home by now. You'd still be fighting for their scraps. I looked at him. Sometimes I still want to. I know, he said. But I also know this, you're building something better. And someday they're going to realize they can't be part of it. I exhaled slowly. It just hurts. He took my hand. Let it hurt, but don't let it pull you backward. The next morning, we made pancakes in our pajamas, danced to cheesy Christmas music, and opened a couple of small gifts, just the two of us. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. And in that quiet, gentle morning, I realized something. Maybe I hadn't lost my family. Maybe I'd just started choosing a new one. I should have known better, but I still sent the message. It was late November, the first real chill creeping into Austin, when I stared at my phone for a full hour before typing out the text. Hi, Mom, Noah and I were thinking of coming home for Christmas this year. Let me know if that's okay. I sat frozen after hitting send. I told myself it wasn't begging, it was just extending a hand. Again, because no matter how many times they dropped it, some part of me couldn't stop reaching. Noah didn't say anything when I told him, just wrapped his arms around me and said, "Whatever happens, you'll be okay." The reply came the next morning. Not from my mom, from my dad, strangely. Hi, Ellie. Just wanted to let you know that we've decided not to host Christmas this year. Too much going on, everyone's busy. Hope you understand. Take care. That was it. No mention of Lily, no questions about us. Just a polite, distant shut door. I didn't cry. I wish I had. But it was the dry kind of hurt, the kind that sits low in your stomach and presses down until you can't even speak. Cancelled, I said aloud that night as Noah and I sat on the couch, lights off, TV playing some holiday movie in the background. They canceled Christmas. He raised an eyebrow. Or just canceled you. I wanted to argue. I always wanted to argue. Make excuses for them the way I always did. But I couldn't. Instead, I just stared at the ceiling. Maybe I pushed too hard, I whispered. Noah turned toward me. Ellie, they lied to you, they took your money, they ignored your biggest life decision, and now they've disinvited you from a holiday. You didn't push too hard, you barely pushed at all. I rested my head against his shoulder. I just wanted it to be normal for once. A few days later, on Christmas Eve, I opened Instagram to distract myself from the ache. That's when I saw it. Lily's video. She'd posted it to her story. 30 glittering seconds of our parents' living room, decked out in gold and silver ornaments, a roaring fireplace, and garland across every surface. The smell of cinnamon and pine practically leapt off the screen. Their dog, my childhood dog, wore a red bow and wagged his tail in front of a pile of wrapped gifts. My parents sat on the couch, laughing. Lily posed with her boyfriend near the tree, holding a mug that said First Christmas Engaged. Engaged. I hadn't even known. The camera panned across the room. Every extended family member I remembered was there. Cousins, aunts, even Uncle Tony, who never flew in for anything. People I hadn't seen since I was 18. Everyone, except me. There was no mention of me, no sign of me, just absence. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Noah came out of the bedroom with a mug of cocoa, but I didn't say anything. I just handed him my phone and waited. He watched the video once. Then again. Then he looked at me, jaw tight. They didn't cancel Christmas, they just canceled you. I nodded, the lump in my throat finally breaking loose. I kept hoping they'd surprise me, I whispered. Like maybe this year they'd miss me, maybe they'd call. Noah set the mug down gently and sat beside me. They didn't just forget, they made sure you'd see it. I hadn't thought of that, but he was right. The story, the tags, the way everyone was smiling so hard, as if to say, look what a happy family we are. A holiday highlight reel carefully edited to erase me. And the worst part, it worked. It worked because the silence hurt more than any insult ever could. Can I tell you something? Noah said after a long silence. Please. If you weren't strong, really strong, you'd have gone back home by now. You'd still be fighting for their scraps. I looked at him. Sometimes I still want to. I know, he said. But I also know this, you're building something better. And someday they're going to realize they can't be part of it. I exhaled slowly. It just hurts. He took my hand. Let it hurt, but don't let it pull you backward. The next morning, we made pancakes in our pajamas, danced to cheesy Christmas music, and opened a couple of small gifts, just the two of us. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. And in that quiet, gentle morning, I realized something. Maybe I hadn't lost my family. Maybe I just started choosing a new one. The sun was high when I stepped out of the rideshare car at Rosewood Park. The sky looked like it had been painted just for the occasion, blue with a few wispy clouds, the kind brides hope for in their Pinterest dreams. I stood there for a moment, smoothing the skirt of my simple navy dress, clutching a modest box wrapped in white paper and tied with twine. A part of me had wanted to wear red, bold, unapologetic, but I'd gone quiet instead. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. A young woman in a headset approached with a clipboard and a too-bright smile. Name? Ellie Ward. She scanned her list, then glanced up. Ah, yes, right this way. She didn't say welcome. Didn't say we're glad you came. We walked past the main setup, rows of white chairs in front of a floral arch, a string quartet tuning instruments under a linen canopy. Guests milled about in polished suits and pastel dresses, sipping champagne already. I recognized faces from childhood Christmas cards, people who had once known me as Lily's little sister before I became just the other one. The usher stopped beside a tiny table near the back. 2 chairs, one floral centerpiece wilting in the sun, and no place cards. It was tucked behind a tall hedge, like someone had deliberately designed the seating chart to keep me hidden. This is you, she said cheerfully. I blinked. Just me? Yes, she said, already turning away. I set the gift down on the table and looked around. The main tables were covered in gold-rimmed plates and crystal glasses. The family table, long, extravagant, was already buzzing with chatter. Lily stood near it in a sleek white satin robe, laughing, hair swept into a perfect low chignon. My parents were beside her, my father beaming, my mother fussing over a flower pin on Lily's dress. They hadn't noticed me. I sat down, carefully crossing my legs, trying not to wrinkle the hem of my dress. From this angle, I could barely see the altar. Guests kept passing by, nodding politely like I was a stranger, maybe someone's plus one who didn't belong. A waiter brought water to every other table, skipped mine. I almost laughed. Of course. This is ridiculous, I muttered under my breath. I looked down at the gift in front of me, small, personal, handmade. A framed ink drawing I'd done of Lily and me when we were kids. Holding hands on the swings in our backyard, from a photo I kept buried in a shoebox. I thought stupidly that it might mean something, that it might remind her of who we used to be before everything became about who shined more, who got more, who mattered more. But now, sitting in this forgotten corner, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. I didn't belong in the shadows anymore. Not here. Not in this family. Not in this story they'd crafted without me. I hadn't come for revenge. I hadn't even come to make a point. I just wanted to show up, give them one last chance to see me. But now I realized they already had seen me, and they'd chosen to look away. The music started. Guests began to take their seats. I stayed where I was, frozen, wondering if I should leave. If slipping away before the vows, before the toasts and forced small talk would be the stronger move, or the lonelier one. I stood slowly, brushing invisible lint from my dress, heart thudding. My gaze drifted toward the parking lot as a car pulled up. A sleek black vehicle, engine purring like a cat that knew exactly where it belonged. The door opened, and then everything changed. The air changed before I even saw him. You know that feeling when everyone around you senses something at the same time, like a ripple across still water. Heads turned. Conversations paused mid-laugh. The kind of collective stillness that only happens when someone unexpected steps into a carefully curated scene. A luxury car rolled up to the edge of the gravel loop, dark and sleek like it belonged in a movie, not a family wedding. The driver stepped out first, tall, suited, sunglasses gleaming, and walked briskly to the back door. Then the door opened, and out stepped Noah. He wasn't just Noah right then. He was something else. Tailored navy suit, open collar, the kind of calm confidence that couldn't be faked. Flanked by two sharply dressed companions, men I'd never seen before but who carried themselves like bodyguards or executives, maybe both. He looked like someone who belonged in a spotlight, not the shadows. People whispered, "Who is that? Is he famous? Is he with the bride?" I stood rooted in place, hands clenched at my sides, heart galloping. My first instinct was panic. What is he doing here? Then I saw his eyes scan the crowd, calmly, deliberately, until they landed on me. And everything inside me went still. Noah walked toward me with measured steps, his gaze never breaking. Not rushed, not hesitant, just certain. Lily turned from her spot near the altar, her face twisting with confusion. My mother followed her gaze, her smile faltering. My father frowned. Noah reached me. I couldn't breathe. "What?" I managed to say. "What are you doing here?" His smile was soft, a secret only I was meant to see. "I couldn't let you walk through this alone." "I didn't tell you where it was," I whispered. "You didn't have to," he replied. He took my hand gently, the way someone does when they're about to lead you out of something awful and into something better. Gasps fluttered around us like wind through leaves. Then Noah turned toward the crowd. "I'm Noah Thornton," he said clearly, his voice steady but unforced. "I believe I owe my congratulations to the bride and groom." Lily's mouth dropped open. The name landed like a dropped glass, Noah Thornton. As in Thornton Financial Group. As in the kind of last name that made wedding planners stammer and family members suddenly interested. Someone whispered, "The Thorntons own that estate firm downtown." Another voice, "Wait, he's that Noah." The suited man beside him stepped forward and handed Lily and her fiancé an envelope and a velvet box. "A small gift," Noah said casually. "From the two of us." I didn't know what was in the envelope, but I could guess. The box held a designer watch, limited edition. The kind that made people gasp before they even opened it. Noah looked at me again. "May I have this dance?" I blinked. "Right now?" The string quartet, sensing something cinematic was happening, shifted instinctively into a soft instrumental, a waltz, or maybe just background music for a different kind of power move. He held out his hand. "You don't have to hide anymore." I took it. We walked together to the dance floor. And suddenly the crowd turned, not toward Lily, not toward the altar, not toward the perfect cake or the floral arch. They turned to me, the sister in the shadow, the girl they forgot, now the woman in the center. My dress didn't sparkle. My shoes weren't designer, but none of it mattered, because I was seen, because the story had just changed. Noah's hand was warm in mine as we stepped onto the dance floor. The music curled around us. Something soft and old, the kind of melody that felt like remembering. My heart thudded, not just from nerves, but from the slow, dawning realization. This wasn't a rescue, it was a reclaiming. For the first few seconds, I didn't move. I stood there, watching the stunned faces just beyond the string lights. Lily's frozen smile. My father's jaw twitching. My mother's hands tight around her clutch. All of them watching. All of them finally watching. Noah leaned in just enough for me to hear him. "If you want to walk out right now, we will. But if you want to stay, then stay on your terms." I looked up at him. "I'm staying." He smiled. "Good, because you're incredible." I didn't need a speech, didn't need fireworks. The truth didn't need volume, it just needed presence. So we danced. Not perfectly, not theatrically. Just real. My head rested lightly against his chest, his arm secure around my back, guiding me with quiet assurance. Each step felt like I was rewriting a chapter I didn't know could end differently. Somewhere mid-song, I lifted my head. The crowd hadn't turned away. In fact, they were watching more intently than ever. Whispers moved like ripples. "She's the sister, right? I didn't even know she was here." "That's Noah Thornton's girlfriend." I let them talk. Let the spotlight they had never offered me finally land. Only now I didn't need it. I didn't crave their validation. Because for once I wasn't trying to earn my seat at the table. I was the table. When the music faded, there was a pause just long enough to register the weight of what had happened. Then applause. Tentative at first, then stronger. I turned, expecting Noah to say something else, but instead it was Lily who stepped forward. Her veil had been removed. Her cheeks were flushed not from joy, from fury. "Ellie," she said through a tight smile, "can we talk?" Noah's hand slid away. I nodded. "Of course." She led me a few steps aside, her voice low and sharp. "What are you doing?" "Dancing," I said simply. "Making a scene. You couldn't handle not being the center of attention for once, is that it?" I tilted my head. "Funny, I've spent my entire life not being the center." She bristled. "You don't even belong here." "Then why send me an invitation?" I asked. "Why bother texting me at all?" Lily faltered. Behind her, our parents were approaching, slowly, hesitantly, like people who had just watched something they couldn't quite process. My mother opened her mouth first. "Ellie, sweetheart, this isn't the place." "No," I said, turning toward them. "It's exactly the place." My father blinked. "We didn't realize you'd bring someone." "Because I wasn't invited with someone," I replied. "I was invited as an afterthought and seated like one." Noah rejoined me then, sliding his hand into mine. I took a breath, steady and full. "It's not about who he is," I said, my voice low but firm. "It's about how you treated me." A hush fell again, the kind that makes people listen. Lily looked away. My mother pressed her lips together. My father cleared his throat, but I was already done. No more begging, no more proving, no more shrinking. Noah squeezed my hand. "Ready?" I nodded. And we walked past the dance floor, past the watching eyes, past the family who had always made me feel small. Out into the night, into something new. 1 year later, I stood beneath soft lights in a renovated warehouse on the east side of Austin, surrounded by white walls and colors that told my story better than words ever could. My name, Ellie Ward, was printed cleanly on the placard by the door. Below it, the title of the show, Weightless, a collection of unlearning. People wandered the gallery, murmuring over brushstrokes, textures, and shapes I had once cried into. Some paintings were bursts of anger, others shadows of longing. One in the far corner, subtle, small, depicted a single little girl at a birthday party full of strangers, balloons floating above her head like question marks. I watched a woman stare at it for a long time. She didn't speak. She just wiped her cheek and moved on. I never introduced myself. I didn't need to. Across the room, Noah stood beside a group of reporters, casually talking about my work like he was describing constellations. He didn't boast. He didn't perform. He just believed in me, out loud, without hesitation. He caught my eye from across the room and lifted his glass. I smiled. The space buzzed with warmth, friends from school, professors, fellow artists. A few critics from local publications I'd never imagined would show up. People who saw me not as someone's sister, not as someone's mistake, but as a whole person. As Ellie. I was mid-conversation with a young couple asking about a mixed media piece when I noticed them. My parents, standing near the back by the entrance, not dressed for attention, no big gestures, just quiet. My mother clutched her purse like it was something to protect her. My father stood stiff, hands in his pockets. I didn't wave, didn't walk over, I didn't need to. Let them witness. Let them wonder how it all happened without their blessing. After a while, they slipped out the door. No drama. No apologies, just a silence that finally meant nothing to me. Later that night, I stood by the tall windows, looking out at the city. Noah came to my side and slid an arm around my waist. "How does it feel?" he asked. I took a deep breath. Like the first time I could finally exhale. He kissed my temple. "You did this." "No," I said softly. "We did this. But more than that, I finally stopped waiting for someone to invite me into my own life." The gallery behind us pulsed with life. Laughter. Music, the clinking of glasses, joy not borrowed but built. I turned back toward it all and smiled. Some stories start in the shadows, in rejection, in heartbreak, in silence. But the best ones, they end in rooms like this, bright, full, and mine.